Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It was my intention to do these every week, but life gets busy. So didn't get to do one last week, but excited to do this again this week. Idea of these LinkedIn Lives is where I'm doing breakdowns from sales calls. And the idea behind this literally is a call that I listened to 30 minutes ago. So this is a really relevant, recent conversation. What happens is I hear something that I think, that's an interesting thing to analyze and to talk about with the audience. I knock on Matt's door and I say, Matt, let's just jump on LinkedIn Live and tell the audience what I've just heard and see what people think. Hello to everyone tuning in. I want you just to drop in the comments. Tell me why you've decided to specifically tune into this LinkedIn Live cold call breakdown, where we're going to be dealing with the objection, this isn't a priority. So that's specifically the thing that I've heard in the call, which I'm going to play out. I'm going to play the actual call in a few moments' time. So we're going to hear what the salesperson said, what the prospect said. We're going to hear what I think the salesperson did well, what they didn't do so well. If you've got any colleagues that you work with who get hit with these objections, this isn't a priority right now, tag them in this post so they can, in the comments, so they can join in and listen and learn as well. But I want to know from anybody who's watching this right now, how do you feel when you call somebody up and you get told by the prospect, sorry, this isn't a priority right now? How do you feel? What does that make you feel when you hear those words? Does it make you feel enthused, defeated? Is there a path forward? I want you to just pop in the comments. How does that make you feel when you hear this isn't a priority for you right now? Tell you what, personally speaking, when I hear that objection, it's like any objection really, and I talk about this a lot, is the reality is with any objection is oftentimes it's not the real reason. And so oftentimes we just need to spend time actually just trying to learn and trying to understand more. If you think, especially in a cold call situation, the prospect is typically going to just say anything at all, anything whatsoever, the first thing that comes out of their mouth. And so oftentimes they've not actually thought about it that clearly in their heads as well. And so oftentimes for me, when I hear this, I'm like, okay, I just need to try and figure out what does this even mean. And I'm seeing some comments come in. Tarlock is saying it's not really important. I'd love to hear what you mean by that. So Tarlock, please elaborate on that. Win, love hearing this objection because that's 90% a knee-jerk reaction. I completely agree. Not a priority really translates to, and oftentimes is like, I'm not really thinking about this right now, or this isn't something I really understand the value of right now is often the case. Tim says, I've not explained it right. I love that, Tim, because oftentimes that's such a, I agree with you. Sometimes I come off a call where I've heard that objection and I'm like, I just don't think the prospect really understood what it is that we were looking to do, what we're looking to solve. So it's a really valuable comments that have been added in. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put it, start to play the call that I've heard, not a priority. Obviously, it's something that we face every day or every week if we're in the art of prospecting. As I say, I'm going to play the actual conversation. I'm going to stop and start the tape. I'm going to give you my thoughts, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So anything that you're observing, please pop in the comments as I'm playing this, and we'll try and get through as many of these comments as possible. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to share a specific tab. Okay, I'm going to share that. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen, everyone. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just quickly find this call in Refract. So I'm going to search for the phrase not a priority. The prospect said that. I want to search in our outbound call folders. And here's the call, and I can see that actually here's the part of the conversation where the objection is being mentioned. But we're just going to open this up and take a deeper dive into the call itself. Okay, so if I just open this up, so here's a call. The context of this call, for everybody's benefit, is that this isn't really an ice cold call as I would describe it. This is someone that we've spoken with in the past, some time ago. The prospect probably can't even really remember the conversation, if I'm being honest. But there's actually the guy isn't expecting the call, and my colleague here has done his opening segment of the conversation, and I want you to listen to what the prospect says next. Here's what the prospect says, and this, again, you can see this is 41 seconds into the call.
Yeah, I mean, it's a technology that would interest me, but as the same as when I kept speaking with Rachel, really, it's all about timing, and it never really seems to be the right time for that, just because, you know, it's like you weigh up different priorities. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say worth keeping the pipeline, but for much further into the future. So we're talking 3 to 6 months, I'd imagine.
Okay, right. I'm just going to pause sharing there. Appreciate that the clarity in the prospect's phone line wasn't very clear there, but I'm just going to tell you what he said. He said, I've got interest in this technology, but the timing's not right, and it might make sense for us to talk in about 6 months down the line. So 3 key things that we've heard here. I've got interest in this technology. Now is not the right time. Maybe we should speak in 6 months. I want to know right now. Put in the comments, if you were in that situation, how do you think you would be? What would be going through your head at that specific moment of the conversation? If you heard those 3 things, just pop in the comments here. I'm really intrigued to see what people have got to say. So as a reminder, the prospect said, I've got interest in this technology. The timing's not great for this. Maybe we should speak in 6 months' time. What would be going through your head if you were in my colleague's shoes at this stage? Get your comments through here. I'm really intrigued. We'll start to talk about these things, because actually it's amazing what happens when you analyze calls. We're talking like a 20-second piece of dialogue here, which is full, in my opinion, of interesting things. And, you know, this is where I kind of get, like, prospects say, oh, you can't analyze your cold calls. They're really short calls. 20 seconds there. You've heard 3 bits of information. Right, Tim, ask him what interests him and keep him talking engaged. Love that. I've got Anthony saying he wants to use the platform, but cash flow is difficult after lockdown. That's an interesting perspective. I think that's a good assumption. Cash flow is difficult, but he wants to use the platform. I still personally feel, is cash flow the real issue here? I still don't feel we really know that. Nathan, sounds like you've got a lot on your plate right now. What do you think is going to change in the next 3 to 6 months? That's a super interesting comment, and you'll find out very soon why. Adam, what interests you about the technology? And I love this, because, like, this is the stuff that you're observing here is the stuff that I'm observing. Because the reality is, how did the prospect answer that question? The first thing that he said, this technology interests me. He didn't start with, the time is not right on this. This isn't a priority. He started by saying, and this is what I call an emotive nugget, the technology interests me. Now, this is where, like, I would be thinking, okay, and as Adam has perfectly said in the comments, so understand timing. You know, what I would do, isolate the objection, remove the objection out of the way for a second. Don't make the conversation about the objection. Push it aside and say, hey, listen, I appreciate, you know, timing isn't right now. And I'd like to learn more about that. But just curious, you said this technology interests you. What is it about it that interests you? What do you think would happen if Mark had asked that question, that part of the conversation? Do you feel that the conversation would have remained in this objection around timing and priority. Getting more comments in here. Carrie, he's interested. Great. He must have a need for it. I part agree with you there, Carrie. I say definitely yes, he's interested. He must have a need for it. I don't feel we know yet. I feel there's so much more to figure out to see, does he need it? Brian, if we hear the entire call, we could easily play back a few of his likes. I'm curious in where he feels this tech would give his team an advantage. How would it help him personally? How would it help his team? We're all giving good stuff here, and the benefit of hindsight is amazing, isn't it? But anyway, let's listen to what Mark says in response. And I think Nathan's going to smile when he hears what Mark says. What Mark says next. Okay, so I'm gonna just share my screen again. I'm gonna jump back into Refract, and this is what Mark says next.
Sure, and just so I understand, Jake, because I really wouldn't want to waste your time. Like, what do you think is going to change in the next 3 to 6 months to make it a better time for us?
Okay, so almost like you read his mind, Nathan. Mark said, "Sure, understand that. You know, he's not responding in an aggressive manner. He's acknowledging, he's showing empathy, but he's saying what is gonna change in the next 3 to 6 months to make this a better timing." And why I think this is such a crucial thing to say is, and the question to ask is, because oftentimes, guess what? When we get these types of objections from prospects saying, "Can we speak in 6 months' time?" Let's just be honest with ourselves. What that really means is, I want to let you down, but I want to give you a slither of hope. 9 times out of 10, that's what that means. And because the prospect, their head isn't understanding and appreciating the value that you can add right now. Because if this was a priority, if he did see this as valuable, he wouldn't be saying, "Contact me in 6 months' time." What do you think is going to happen if Mark was to call this person in 6 months' time? I'm going to bet the prospect says, "Time is not right. Call me in 3 to 6 months' time." But I think the ultimate learning here for Mark is, before he actually asked that question, what is key is about staying with the key question is, take the positive from the response, the positive being the emotive nugget in, "I am interested in this technology." Okay, let's ask him, what is it about the technology that interests you? What was going through your head the first time you thought about this? There's so many ways that conversation can ultimately go to a path of, actually, the prospect just needs to remind themselves in that moment that actually there's maybe something to explore here. But I feel Mark kind of cut the conversation too short here by just challenging the prospect on, "Listen, I don't want to wait. Let's not waste each other's time. What is actually going to change in the next 3 to 6 months?" Which I actually think is a really good question, and it stops this merry-go-round we have with prospects, just chasing people and following up, and all this rubbish that just costs us time as salespeople. Okay, so let's listen to what the prospect says next, and then we're going to analyze that next part of the conversation. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to hear what the prospect says next.
Well, I mean, with COVID going on, we've just got certain priorities on certain pieces of software. So it's not that we're not looking to buy, but there's other things that I would weigh up as higher priority.
Right. Again, this time 6 seconds, 7 seconds, full of goodness. So just to repeat what he said there, he said, "Well, with COVID going on, and we're looking at other pieces of software, and we've got other priorities." It's like, whoa, hang on, COVID? Where did that come from? What does that even mean? Sometimes you might hear, with COVID going on, budgets are tight, we're making layoffs, we're not spending any money. But he says, with COVID going on, we're actually looking at other pieces of software. So it's almost the opposite of what you would typically associate with hearing a COVID objection. Again, put in the comments if you just heard the prospect say, and he kind of took a little bit of a pause, well, with COVID going on, we're actually looking at other pieces of software, and we just need to figure out, we've just got other priorities. If you heard that at that part of the call, what would you be thinking next? What would you do next? Put in the comments. I want to hear what your suggestions are. So this is just super. It feels like the comments have stopped coming through, Matt. I don't know if that's a problem with the software. Maybe just people are just encapsulated with what I'm saying. But I think what's really interesting here, and I'm going to talk about the COVID objection, because I'm pretty sure that, for a lot of people, they probably have heard that quite a lot over the past few months. COVID. And guess what? COVID has been, in some cases, a very valid objection. Not even an objection, a reason. COVID has impacted us badly as a business. We're having to make layoffs. We're making cuts. We don't have money. Okay, that's understandable. It's been hard for some companies. Some businesses harmed more than others. But equally, COVID has just become, in some cases, one of those knee-jerk reaction objections, because it's the only thing prospects can think of to say. And it's the easy thing to say of like, oh, COVID. It's like, just think of a random objection and just chuck it out there, and maybe that'll make the salesperson go away. I'm hearing Sean say, why is that time going to be better deployed as challenges? Because it's disguising an adult-to-adult transaction, but it's really an ulterior critical parent child. That's not really a good time to cause it. That's why I started clutching at straws. He's lying like a naughty kid now. Interesting. Francis, we need more information about what's happening, isn't it? I totally agree. It's like, we've heard things there. What do they even mean? Did he even mean to say COVID? Is that actually a valid thing? Is there some connection between COVID and software that he's buying? Is the reality is that they're just looking at other software? And so again, the lesson I think here is, sometimes when you hear these objections from prospects, just kind of take a step back and almost just wade through the noise, and don't be afraid to ask prospects. You mentioned COVID there. Can you just help me understand, how is COVID impacting your priorities? Get the clarity you deserve. You've got the prospect on the call. Ask for the clarity, because sometimes these things don't even make any sense. The prospects say these things just because it's the first thing that come into their head. Right, we're going to jump back into the we're going to listen to the last part of this, just to hear what happens next. Okay, so this is what Mark asked next.
Priority.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No worries. Just out of interest, right? What is high on your priority list right now?
The big one at the moment is about relationship management. So that's what we're.
Okay, I'm just going to stop there. So you heard he actually said, the prospect said, Mark asked the question, what is high on your priority list right now? I think it's the valid question to ask at this stage of the call, because if he says things like, oh, really, we're looking to just improve conversion ratios, or I'm looking to just, improve performance of the sales team. Oftentimes when you ask that question, the prospect drops in a challenge, an objective, a project that that you can help with. And sometimes they just haven't drawn the dots in their head about what you do and the things that they're actually working on. And if you understand the world of your prospect, what their key objectives are, because we sell to, VPs of sales, sales directors, heads of sales, we know what their challenges are. I do feel in the reality, Mark is on the back foot a little bit now. And I think if you think of a critical moment of a call, of a critical moment of a conversation, it's at that specific moment where the prospect says, this sounds interesting, but sometimes I call these the golden nuggets, the emotive nuggets. These are the defining moments of sales calls where literally you go in one direction versus another and you get a different outcome. And until you actually analyze these things, listen to them back, you're forever just kind of living in blissful ignorance. You don't actually realize how you can actually make adjustments and improvements. I'm just going to wrap up with a couple of final comments on here, Carrie. It's not that we are not looking to buy. We just need to create some urgency here, get the prospect of the problem they have, and then get a dollar value attached to that problem. Need more discovery. I agree. I think that the challenge is this is an unscheduled call. It's not really the time to be doing discovery. We haven't earned that time with the prospect yet. But I agree that it's about figuring out the problem. But also, I just want to kind of leave things with this as well. Like, not every prospect is in buy mode. And sometimes we kind of think that we have to make these things a priority in our prospects world. You can't always make things a priority for people. People sometimes are just getting by with what they're doing. They're focused in other areas. I think someone once said to me that if you're not if you're not in a position to solve the top like 2 or 3, maximum 3 priorities of that prospect at that moment in time, it's very, very, very unlikely that you're going to get them to buy. And if you actually put yourself in the shoes of your seller, if you were to think of anything in life like that you wanted to buy, you probably have like 2 or 3 priorities in your head. Anything else you're probably not thinking about. You probably don't care about thinking about right now. Don't always feel like everybody that you speak to has to be convinced to have a priority, to have a pain or problem. Get comfortable with the fact, like Mark did on this call, the objective of his call was he did not want to be left with a maybe, with a, you know, let's speak in 6 months' time. No, get rid of the maybes, get yeses, get nos. That's the objective in sales. Spend time with prospects who want to buy your stuff. That's enough from me. If you've enjoyed this session, if you want more of this kind of call breakdown, put yes, Rich, in the comments. Love to keep on doing these. Again, this is like stuff that I literally listened to about half an hour ago, and I'm like, right, I want to share this with the audience. This is like highly relevant, recent, of the moment stuff. So yeah, please continue to put that your comments if you want to see more of this stuff, and we'll hopefully be back next week with another slot. That's all for me. Have a good day and speak to you very soon.